There were more American flags at the DNC than there were at the RNC.
Patriotism's cool when it's new.
American flags are back in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, because that's not the flags they like to.
Liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov broke her 4 MAGA co-hosts' hearts as she triumphantly returned from the Democratic National Convention, where I got to meet her, by the way, and celebrated the successes of the Harris-Walz campaign. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. As you know, we are the unofficial Jessica Tarlov fan club. I think she has the hardest job in media. I think she does it exceptionally well. And this was her week. The Democratic National Convention exceeded all expectations in terms of fundraising and viewership and energy, et cetera, and so forth. And of course, her MAGA co-hosts, 4 of the 5 on the 5, did not like that, but she was able to give them some brutal fact checks, and I'm going to share some of them with you now.
Vegas, and the evidence of how well she did is in cold hard facts. In ratings, Trump's favorite thing, 22% up from Donald Trump's acceptance speech. 7.2 million raised between 11 p.m. and midnight over the course of the entire week. Act Blue says over $100 million came in for Democratic candidates, organizations. There was a panel of undecided Pennsylvania voters, a focus group. 8 of them in there. 6, after watching the speech, are now going with Kamala Harris. Those are all hard facts that show that she did a really good job. We know about the enthusiasm.
She's so good. Absolutely true. So, yeah, one of the things that we mentioned in a previous video is the fact of the matter that the DNC blew out the viewership of the Republican National Convention, which, by the way, to be fair to people who'd been advocating for President Biden to step down, at least some of what they said was vindicated by this. You know, so much of what they said is, listen, if you do this, there will be so many eyes on the Democratic National Convention, it'll generate excitement. They were right. The proof is in the pudding, not just in terms of fundraising, which, you know, again, as a reminder, in July alone, the Harris campaign, fundraised over $300 million, a staggering sum compared to the Trump campaign. $100 million this week, $7 million in an hour between 11 p.m. and midnight. All these are staggering. But the viewership, to me, I just love the fact that she's pointing that out because, again, Donald Trump, you have to remember, he isn't really a politician. I mean, by definition, he is, but in his heart, he is an entertainer, a reality TV show star, which, by the way, quite frankly, is where he should have stayed. And so he looks at things in terms of viewership. That's his metric, not policy success, not whether or not people are happy or satisfied with the results of his administration, but just PR, period. And in that respect, even the Harris campaign and the DNC have triumphed meaningfully, substantially over the Republican National Convention. So I love that that's being pointed out. But it's not just viewership. Jessica Tarlov also points out that the Democrats seem to be reclaiming patriotism from the Republicans.
There were more American flags at the DNC than there were at the RNC.
Patriotism's cool when it's new.
American flags are back in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, because that's not the flags they like to. That's not the flags they like to sail. They like to burn the American flag and raise the Palestinian flag.
Oh, and her saying.
So they were very triggered by that, but it's true. So listen. People have been saying, myself included, for a long time that electorally it probably is in Democrats' best interest to try to reclaim the mantle of patriotism from an authoritarian Republican Party. You know, the Republican Party dresses itself in the trappings of patriotism. So they tend to, wear red, white, and blue and, sing patriotic songs. But they're MAGA Republicans in particular. They've abandoned notions of patriotism. America was founded on this notion that we don't have a monarch. We emancipated ourselves. We rebelled against a monarch. We have a chief executive who's duly elected, but then returns to be among the people. We don't have a sovereign. And yet MAGA Republicans and Trump want to make Trump a king. Trump has publicly advocated for the termination of the Constitution. No Democrat has done that. Trump has demanded absolute presidential immunity, and his Supreme Court was all too eager to comply. And we've talked about the polls. Polls show that while most Americans agree that presidents shouldn't be given absolute immunity, if the poll question changes from president to President Trump, the number of Republicans who support the notion of immunity skyrockets, right? Unfortunately, the Republican Party isn't a pro-America party. They hate America. Even the slogan, make America great again, suggesting it's not great now or it's not great when they're not in power. Donald Trump has repeatedly, publicly demeaned America, referring to it as a crappy nation, a nation in decline, a third world or developing nation, et cetera and so forth. Imagine if a Democrat said anything like that. The criticism that they would get from those same Fox News hosts who are so triggered by Jessica Tarlov's facts. But the fact of the matter is that the DNC this year really did vigorously reclaim notions of patriotism. They were waving the flag. They were chanting USA, USA. And for my money, as somebody who considers himself pretty progressive, I think this is good. I think that it's important to, I think we need to electorally recognize that people they want to like their country. They want to like where they live. They want to be proud of their country. They want a permission structure, by the way, which permits it as well. For me, America's a home, right? It's not a spouse. That it's a home, and there's a degree of sentimentality there, but there's also got to be a degree of objectivity. So if I live in a house that has issues, cracked walls, a leaky roof, an uneven foundation, you have to acknowledge that. You have to be clear-eyed about it, and you have to work vigorously to correct it. If a house needs to be remodeled, renovated, or expanded, you do that. And it doesn't mean you don't love the house by recognizing that. So to me, this notion of patriotism and also recognizing that America has a deeply flawed past, a deeply flawed present, and we have to work vigorously to correct these flaws. These are not mutually exclusive. Republicans want you to believe that patriotism is like blind loyalty, except, of course, when they're not in power, and then you can just relentlessly talk smack about America for pure cynical political reasons. But I think this is good. And unfortunately, they're not too happy about that fact, these MAGA Republicans. Now, before I play some of these other clips, I want to remind you, this goes to the next few clips I'm going to show you of Jessica Tarlov. It goes back to what President Obama said during the second night of the convention when he took a pretty funny cheap shot at Donald Trump, who richly deserved it. This is the predicate for what follows.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
So that went viral, as well it should. But for those of you, again, who are too innocent, blissfully so, and not given to puerile sense of humor, President Obama was making a dick joke about Donald Trump. Again, he was suggesting that Trump's obsession with grandiosity and the size of crowds, the size of planes, the size of this, that, and the other, it's a Freudian thing to compensate for a small penis. That's the joke, okay? And a lot of Republicans, a lot of Trump supporters did not like that, including Trump himself. But Jessica Tarlov was pretty quick in two different settings in the aftermath of that to really push back on this idea that President Obama and Michelle Obama were somehow obligated to be kind to Donald Trump, given his legendary cruelty, not just in general, but to them in particular.
But those were compelling, well-delivered speeches that were exactly what Kamala needed. And people complaining about the tone or the tenor of it obviously didn't watch the RNC, which was all about demonizing Joe Biden, and have forgotten, I guess, that Donald Trump was an OG birther. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama need never be kind about that man for saying what he did about them.
She's absolutely right. This goes back to something that we talk about so much on this channel, which is this idea that we're not obligated. We are not morally obligated. Obligated. We are not obligated to be kind to Donald Trump. We are not obligated to be kind to MAGA Republicans. Now, that's a choice. There's certainly political utility in being kind to people, at least from time to time. And you may have MAGA Republicans, as I do, that I love because they're family members and friends. That is a choice I make. I make a choice to be kind to MAGA Republicans that I know personally or that I love who are members of family and friends, or even in civil conversation with strangers, right? That's not an obligation. It's a choice. Donald Trump and Fox propagandists and so many others want you to believe that you are obligated, for the sake of civility, for the sake of decency, to be kind to the most cruel political movement in history. As far as I'm concerned, you're not. It's a personal choice. And I think it's perfectly fair to say, hey, listen, if you support Donald Trump in 2024, you either ignore his cruelty or you celebrate it. Either way, you tolerate it, in which case you're really not in a position to demand civility from others unless you're first going to reject Donald Trump, or at the very least, publicly, consistently condemn his cruelty. So if a Republican can come up to me and says, Josiah, I want you to be nice to me because even though I support Donald Trump, publicly and privately, I have condemned his cruelty. I think it's despicable. It's disgusting. It's beneath him. I don't accept it. Then I might understand where you're coming from, but even that I would struggle with because, again, at the end of the day, you're choosing to tolerate that sort of thing. But I don't think a person who accepts that in their own camp or celebrates that in their own camp is in a position to demand it of others. And I think that's what she's saying. Michelle Obama famously said, when they go low, we go high. And I think it's a beautiful, idealistic, aspiration, but it just doesn't describe political reality. I think she was wrong. Jared Moskowitz, a Democratic congressman whom I interviewed at the DNC, he said, I would revise it to when they go low, we go middle, right? Because he also gives it back, at least to some extent, to MAGA Republicans in Congress, and they can't handle it. They're simply no match. They're so fragile. They're the snowflakes. They love dishing it out, but can't handle a fraction of it in return. So I think it's really good for Jessica Tarlov to say, hey, listen, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, they're really not obligated to say nice things about Trump or to not say mean things about Trump. And they can say mean things about Trump if they wish. And if you don't like that, then you should condemn Donald Trump first and foremost. I love that. I love how she constantly brings the facts. I love how she triggers her MAGA co-hosts with the fact that the Democratic Party, for all its faults and for all its criticisms of America, most of them more than justified, we love this nation more. We want this nation to be better, and we don't want to surrender this nation to a single person. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, whatever. We believe in the ideals that are enshrined in the Constitution, even if Republicans under the cult of Donald Trump simply don't. Great stuff. Great performance by Jessica Tarlov, who, again, I got to meet at the DNC. It was one of the highlights. I loved it. I definitely had a fanboy, fangirl moment. But anyway, great stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments.